And welcome to Your Questions Answered. I'm Adam Wilbourn from WhatCulture, joined by another of the Dudley Boys, Michael Sidgwick from WhatCulture, answer all of your burning wrestling questions. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and YouTube, where we do daily wrestling podcasts, where we review Raw, SmackDown, the show formerly known as NXT 2.0. AEW Dynamite, AEW Collision, pay-per-views, premium live events. We have interviews, roundtable discussions, and a roundup of the week completes with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. As said, though, joined by Michael Sidgwick to answer all of your wrestling questions. But before we really get to them, there's only one place to start, Sidge. Your thoughts on the whole Shane McMahon AEW chat.
Right, okay. I wrote an editorial is sort of a joke, and then I made a point at the end of it called Why Tony Khan Must Take the Nuclear Option.
Yes.
And it was when CM Punk and Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole and that wonderful CM Punk versus MJF feud and all these unbelievable moves that AEW either made or very much foreshadowed in that glorious year of 2021, and then nothing really changed the viewership and all the rest of it. And I made the point, two separate points in the article. If they want one last throw of the dice of like beating Raw or like trying to do this big rating stunt, like Shane McMahon shifted, I'm talking tens of thousands of tickets for WrestleMania 32, which, you know, it's 8 years ago now. But he sold them.
Yep.
And he was a draw. And the idea of a McMahon in WWE's universe was just, especially when Vince was actually still in the chair at the time I wrote this article, was just so inconceivable that you thought, what a publicity stunt, what a rating stunt. And then, as I finished the article with the point making, they could do that, or, hear me out, they could just be happy being an alternative and a number two that serves its own dedicated audience, and the monopoly has broken people's brains, and there can be a number two, and there should be a number two. Like, all I ever wanted was a good number two. You know what I mean? Shut up, man, you baby. You know what I mean? A good second tier wrestling promotion. But I did make the point that it would be quite the publicity stunt. It would feel like, the thing is, right, since writing that article, I can't remember when it was, but since writing that, AEW have too many times tried to do the role that Shane McMahon was born to play in AEW, where the Jericho Appreciation Society have tried to do it. Who else has tried? The Outcasts have tried to do it. And now, to a degree, the elite are doing it, that trying to go against all the values embodied by AEW. You know, the JAS, we do sports entertainment. The Outcasts of, we've come from WWE and it was better and we didn't get respect here. Done it. None of these were really good, like, ever. So the idea of that Jerry Lawler going into ECW, that just that idea of you do not belong here and you are instantly the biggest heel because you just hate it and you're coming to take a piss on it, sort of thing. They've tried that. And that, by the way, is the only role Shane McMahon can play. The only feasible role, the fact of his surname alone, the reason why AEW was, the romantic idea of why AEW happened. In reality, it happened because people didn't want to go to WWE because it was rubbish at the time, but they also wanted some money and all the rest of it. It wasn't like this romantic idea that they wanted to save the soul of professional wrestling. I'm not saying it's completely untrue. I think it's cynical to suggest that. But at the same time, it's a bit of bollocks.
Yeah.
It's a marketing. I mean, it's all a work. That idea, if it was sort of still sacred, Shane McMahon would have to be that person who turned up with a bit of a, I mean, you know, up bad if I've ended up here, and everyone would be like, oh, you don't even want you here, and you don't want to be here. Yeah. I mean, it's that interloper shtick. But again, they've tried to do it in AEW. They've tried to portray AEW itself as this babyface sort of construct, this idea that, you know, if you dare undermine it, you know, you're a baddie. kind of root and poison that well before Shane McMahon has even debuted. But it's like a bad fit and a perfect fit at the same time. The idea that it's such a horrible fit, that how dare Shane McMahon, a McMahon with the cardiovascular conditioning of Andre the Giant in 1994, come into All Elite Wrestling where the best wrestle. He can't even wrestle, and he's a McMahon. It's perfect meta heat. Like it is. Another salient point that I want to sort of, make a counter argument to is with everything that happened. Vince McMahon is a disgusting alleged rapist to the people who like to talk around these things. The things that have happened. He's an alleged, disgusting, reprehensible sex trafficking rapist. Okay? Allegedly. So that does add a connotation to the idea of a McMahon coming in, a bit more than just a daft bit of knockabout heel heat. But at the same time, this idea of AEW as this sacrosanct entity that has saved the very soul of pro wrestling and done it the right way, and it's so morally superior to WWE. It is, but it's all wrestling and everything gets dirty. Mike Tyson, Ric Flair.
Yeah.
It's just these various performers with checkered histories have been brought into AEW before, given prominent time on TV. Let's not do the thing where we think AEW is above it. AEW is absolutely not above it. My personal thoughts are, why the hell not? I want to look at it. I want to feel something. I just want to see it. I do think there's enough in Shane McMahon that I hate him. I genuinely hate him. I don't think I hate anything. That's a lie. I hate a lot of things. I don't hate him. I just intensely dislike him. I think he's such an arrogant bastard. It becomes funny. Very, very, very arrogant, huge mark for himself, incredibly entitled. He had a good rule once when the character was in over his head and relied on the Mean Street Posse. Yeah. Very smug little brat who's never faced adversity in his life. And that's a heel. That is a heel for you. It's totally stunt. It would be a stunt signing. I wouldn't want it to go on forever. It would inevitably and almost instantly hit a point of diminished returns. Shane McMahon, week 1, it's like the most surreal thing imaginable to look at. Right? It would be wild. Week 5, when he's backstage in some segment in what I think would be the learning tree.
Okay.
If you think about it, right, Stadium Stampede feels like it's going to be a fixture at All In, if in fact they ever do a stadium again, which they shouldn't. I'm not being funny, they shouldn't. They are building some kind of multi-man thing with Jericho, who's lined up at least four opponents in Hook, Shibata, Suzuki, and if he can return from the filming schedule for Twisted Metal, Samoa Joe. Then you've got Jericho, Big Bill, Brian Keith, and that's 4-on-3. It's AEW, anyone tends to team with anyone, so you can bump it up to 5-on-5. Shane McMahon is part of the learning tree with Jericho. That is so toxic. That's going to get Bubba Ray turned all the way on in terms of how much heat that would get. I'm sorry it would. And Shane McMahon doing a big, cathartic, stupid stunt at Wembley Stadium. If you're going to do something with him, I think that would be the play.
Yeah.
Never want to see him in a singles match because, again, it would be funny. So, yeah, I do.
I was getting so angry when he'd make those sporadic appearances in WWE. You and I ranted about it endlessly, especially when people would be like, I know, he's, a Nepo baby, etc., etc. But he just do some mad stuff, doesn't he? I was like, yes, because if you only have to work once every 6 months, you can risk doing some bonkers stunt role, unlike the people who've got to be there week in, week out, making the towns, all that sort of thing. It would wind me up so much. Having said that, like you say, what the hell does that look like? Do you think if they announced on a big week with no there's I never know the sports schedule and stuff in America, but a normal week for AEW, if they said, maybe even promoted it the week before, but also all over social media. Everyone would be talking about it, obviously. Next week, Shane McMahon in the ring. What does that do in the ratings? Does that hit 1 million? Because they obviously had that huge start, which was the intrigue of that, the intrigue of AEW. It was the best number, obviously, they ever did, because people want. I think there's an argument of like, I mean, if you've never watched before, Shane in effectively modern day WCW, or if you're a WWE fan who's like, but I want to see what happens with Shane there. And if you're like a lapsed AEW fan, what the hell's gone on for this to be a thing?
I think it would hit the 900s and maybe a 0.3 plus in the demo. Like, it's available in way fewer homes. And in addition, Dynamite, that is, to when it first launched. Mm-hmm. So it's available in fewer homes. And indeed, WWE is the outlier. Wider cable trends, the numbers are just falling like continuously across the board. It would basically do the number of the year, is the short way of saying it. I think it would.
Do you think MJF's head would explode if they said you're going to be the one to interrupt him? I need about 6 weeks to prepare for this, to write as much as I possibly can.
To be honest, like, it comes with a lot of baggage that might not be worth the irony and the yuck of it all. Yeah. That's all I'm in for. The irony, the yuck, the surreal moment, just the experience, just something a bit different. That's where I'm at with it. I mean, I'm not investing in it one way or the other, really. But at the end of the day, I mean, you could get, if you have Christian Cage or MJF cut promos on him, which obviously probably wouldn't, because he has to come in as a heel. Yeah, inviting legal risk and all sorts.
Yeah, fair. We always had a lot of questions about this. I'm going to just throw some of them at you. Parker says, Shane McMahon versus Kenny Omega when?
Well, I'm not being funny, right? I think Kenny Omega is the best big match wrestler in the world. I think he's one of the sharpest, cleverest wrestlers of all time. I think he's the best big match worker ever, actually. Kenny Omega versus a 9-year-old girl genuinely is sensational. How he puts it together, how he gets laughs, how he actually makes people want to see it happen, even though they know it can't. Yeah. Like him get his ass kicked, because he's got such like a cruel sense of humor with the way he does it. I think he could get something out of Shane. I absolutely think he should.
Do you think they would genuinely do the thing we always moan about when they are going to sign a Ricochet or whoever it may be, of like, if they can win this match on Collision against Serpentico?
I mean, it's Shane. It would have to be a part-time multi-man deal. He's not going to be working Brian Cage on Collision to get his numbers up. I mean, it'd be very AEW if he did, and very funny, but it ain't happening.
Trade-off. We're going to bring back the rankings, but also we're bringing in Shane McMahon. He's going to rack up some wins.
I mean, the rankings...
I'd tune back into Rampage if he was on there.
The rankings lasted literally all of a week last time, so...
Yeah. Shane McMahon, Darby Allin, says Nicholas.
Right. Give it to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not even a match. It's just a feat of insanity.
He'd be like Black Lodge Sting.
Yeah.
He would be Black Lodge Sting in AEW. This, as detestable as Sting was heroic, basically exclusively doing tags and multi-man silly party matches. Indeed, it's almost a shame that Sting's retired, because if that was Shane's thing as a heel and Sting's thing as a babyface, them two in the same stupid, ridiculous smoke and mirrors match would be incredible.
I had a thought then. Like, I don't want to see it, obviously. I do and I don't, but you know what I mean. Like, for the long term of AEW, it's not a good idea, like you say. But, like, remember the breadcrumbs they left when Punk was coming in? Of, like, certain things you'd see, or the way they'd present.
Oh, my God, it was the best of times.
Think of what they could do with that. Like, the Young Bucks, like, we've been sent some lovely new trainers.
Well, I mean, they do that all the time.
But with like...
No. With like his colour schemes and stuff.
Mercedes walking past. Oh, here comes the money. Do I want it? Maybe I do.
It's one of those things where I'd want to see it, even if I don't necessarily earnestly want to see it, in that some things are just so captivating that you cannot ignore it. Like, the end of the day, right, I would never want to see Kenny Omega in WWE. Mm-hmm. I think it would be a waste of his mind and the kind of big matches. I mean, he's not taking a shoot Tiger Driver on the Dome. I mean, you want Kenny Omega not in that system, I think. If he turns up on Raw, I'm staying up live to watch it. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing.
The Broken King says, curious if you think AEW will bring in Shane McMahon as a financial backer of the Elite as a hostile takeover thing.
I don't think so. I think that they're already sort of my big complaint about that storyline to begin with is that they're so 1 foot in, 1 foot out. They haven't really wanted to commit to the idea that the Young Bucks and the Elite have radically changed the complexion of the show to the point where, like when the NWO first came into WCW, there was such an, like, transgressive, like the broadcasts would just fall apart and the commentary team would bemoan it and they would just, it was like a takeover. It was so well done. Like the idea that there was an integrity to WCW in the broadcasts and how it all unfolded, and they just wrecked it. They totally wrecked it. They've never done anything close to that with this AEW versus Elite thing. It's a thing that has to dominate the show, but they haven't got the balls to take the entire show in that direction.
Yeah.
They try to have their cake and eat it too. For me, it's failed. And I think the fact that they've already been so tentative about it, it's basically like debuting. It's the equivalent of having a supernatural character just come and do like WWE Speed. Like you've got magic powers, you could win the whole thing. You know what I mean? That's what they've done with this. And the fact that they've been so... They've just lost faith in the idea. I never really wanted to do it properly because it's the only destination to that particular journey is Sold Out 1997, and look how that worked out, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Whichever Sold Out it was. Whatever year it was. So no, I cannot see that because they'd have to build the whole show around that, and I just can't see them doing that.
Final one on Shane for now. If I see any more whilst we're doing this, I'll obviously pick them up. Charles says, is Shane McMahon an important coup for AEW, or would they be better off focusing on training his children for a debut?
Oh, Jesus. No. If fail sons of fail son. No, absolutely not. And I tell you what, already, he's a young kid, but one of Shane's kids already is a PR disaster in waiting. I will tell you that much.
Yeah. Right.
A PR disaster in waiting.
Let's talk about something that
makes... He might not even have much athletic ability.
Yeah. Lots and lots of questions about something you're far more interested in, Bryan Danielson. I'll try and sort of cherry pick it.
Has anyone asked a question about whether Shane should be brought in some kind of backstage capacity?
I'm sure there will have been.
Having a job outside of a part-time talent.
Oh, there you go, Ryan O'Donnell. Should Shane McMahon have a backstage role?
No, absolutely not. I've seen this floated around. Absolutely not. This man is a serial business failure. Every time he's tried to do something outside of WWE, he's failed dismally at it, or it's so obscure that... I mean, has he taken over the world with his business acumen? No, he hasn't.
Just because he suggested buying the UFC...
Yes.
Doesn't necessarily mean that UFC would be where it is today had he bought it.
He's had one good idea that he didn't even actually execute, so... He's just never done out, has he? Came crawling back. So and he went crawling out after WrestleMania 39.
Joe says, if Danielson beats Swerve for the title, who should eventually dethrone the American Dragon and under what circumstances? And I'll add to that, Lupin says, if Bryan doesn't beat Swerve, who do you think will dethrone Swerve?
Okay, if Bryan Danielson wins, it is almost a shame that Darby Allin won Royal Rampage. I think with how over Darby is sort of history with AEW. What a moment it would be, like a proper... I use it loosely. I know he's obviously worked elsewhere, but an AEW day one, a homegrown, however you want to deem it.
Yeah.
And he's earned it. I think his promo skills have improved considerably. I think he's the most underrated wrestler on the planet, seriously. Virtually everyone who shares a ring with him just looks incredible. He's got the character down. He's got that bond with the fans. It would make for a good story. It's only an AEW story, and this is a promotion that's desperately trying to sort of claw back or cling on to its identity. I would have Darby within the next 12 months AEW champion.
Yeah.
Swerve could lose it to him in Tacoma. I would just because Darby still hasn't wrestled a lot of people at the main event level in AEW. Kenny, Ospreay. It's been years since he's had a
Hangman Page thing. Yeah.
It's been years anyway since he's had a singles with MJF. Great TV wrestler.
That was a 5. Well, it wasn't 5 stars, but it was 5 stars.
One of the best openers ever. Yeah,
brilliant. That I liked Hamlet's idea on Dynamite Review with Danielson winning the title and then effectively saying, "Well, the moment I lose this title, I'm done."
Yeah.
Who would that be for you if it's not Darby?
If it's not Darby,
it'd be a bit weird in that scenario.
Danielson. Look, they seem to be wanting to go all the way on cementing Swerve Strickland as one of the best talents of his generation and an established forever AEW main eventer. And it would be an all Pacific Northwest Derby at the Tacoma show, which surely is Danielson's actual last one. I think they would drop it to Swerve again. If it's not Darby, if it isn't Darby Allin, who would be the next sort of first-time AEW champion? That's an interesting one to consider.
Okada?
Okada is not hot enough by half. Ospreay, it feels like you could tell a pretty long-term story with him.
I suppose, it depends if you want to do Danielson loses and sort of shakes that. Like, you could do that with Ospreay. Danielson loses to Ospreay, and he's like, you know what, fair enough, you're the future. Or you want to go full heat and Jack Perry beats him, for example. It depends how you want to do it, really.
Yeah. Darby, it would just be Darby for me, I think. He's long since went above that TNT champion level. You don't want him there forever. He's got that sentimental appeal. He's on a meritocratic level. He's completely earned it a million times. It's Darby Allin. Genuinely, it's Darby Allin. I think he's the most underrated wrestler on the planet.
Switching gears now to WWE. Jude the Dude says, what do you think Cody does post SummerSlam? Is he involved in the Bloodline story or something else?
I'd imagine WWE these days is really quite good at having characters with a lot of different main arcs and subplots. And they can always pick things back up because they adhere to the continuity. They tend to it. They never forget about it. So Cody can have a title rivalry with Owens or Orton, whoever turns first, and then help out an alliance of baby faces. Well, basically Roman, the Usos, and Sammy in a War Games match against the New Bloodline. So there's loads for him to do. This run hasn't even began to peak in terms of his opponents, in terms of how over he is, in terms of how many tickets he's selling. It feels like everything's plotted out in a way that once you get there, it'll all make sense. And that's the Levesque way. You know where it's going. They'll make it make sense, but he's usually very, very good at the big angles that make you realize that you where you expected it to go, but it was worth the wait, if that makes sense. It's never like, it's rarely shocking, but he makes it worth your while.
Yeah, I've said this for a while. We do a lot of predictable things, but predictable isn't always bad.
Yeah.
And like you say, the big things, when they arrive, things across the Rock, for example, are going to be groundbreaking. Not groundbreaking, but just the whole thing's going to shift. Yeah. And ebbs and flows, doesn't it, WWE? They're never going to go back to, well, they're not never, but they're right now not going back to the, right, well, it's May, completely take your foot off the gas and not do anything.
Yeah.
But you sense they're holding stuff back for Survivor Series, for the Royal Rumble, and obviously for next year's WrestleMania.
Yeah. Long term, babyface CM Punk versus babyface Cody Rhodes versus heel CM Punk.
Oh my God.
I know Cody's got that business with The Rock. He might even take the belt because I like that belt.
I think I'd retire from wrestling at that point.
Completed it.
Completed it. That's peaked at that point. Not for you, Nicholas. Interesting one for you here from Thomas Santos. Thank you, Thomas, for the question.
Thank you all for your questions.
Indeed.
I always appreciate this.
Who do you think are the most promising male and female wrestlers in NXT right now?
Oh, that is a good question. Lola Vice has got something.
It's bad to say her, yeah.
I've always said like she feels she's still not nowhere near all the way yet. But she like there's a problem, and I think it's a performance center issue, to be honest. There is a problem where they like to teach them the WWE match, and it's ironic because this company's always like the rhetoric about like storytelling and fundamentals and getting it right, and everything else is outlaw or everything else is just spot fest or whatever. Yeah, they don't do the greatest job of teaching fundamentals and actually sort of like making your stuff look legit and snug before you start worrying about how to do your facial expressions when they do the kickouts and all the rest of it.
Or what to do if a move goes wrong or you get lost. Yeah,
exactly. I see a lot of NXT matches where like Sol Ruka looks like she couldn't, like really hurt anyone with the total lack of impact in her stuff. Lola Vice totally lays it in. In terms of the male prospects, Obafemi is the future WWE champion, and he's only wrestled probably still fewer than 50 matches at this point.
Yeah.
I think that's scary because he's obviously shown a lot of promise. He's displayed his promise, so calling him promising might be beneath him at this point. But in terms of where he can still go, it's, Obafemi and Lola Vice are the two ones I get the most out of.
I remember chatting about Obafemi with Hamflet in the office. Any guesses as to... He's got 44 matches on his cage match. First match, according to this. Want to take a guess who he faced?
Right, okay, if it's first match...
NXT Live in Dade City, Florida, USA.
Dade City. Shag City. Sucking City. Sorry. Right. Surely they would want him in there with someone who can guide him a little bit, so someone a bit experienced. Is it cheating to narrow it down to a date?
I don't think so. I don't think it gives it too much away. November of 2022.
Yeah, I've got no idea then. That makes it harder, if anything, because obviously Sean Spears wasn't there, and 22. I don't even know who gets released now. So I'd have put him in there with Danny Burch if he's still around. Danny Burch.
It says here Channing Stacks Lorenzo.
Shut up, man. I'm not being funny. That's the blind leading the blind. Like, no, I'm not trying to be a dickhead, but I mean, it's obviously fine. They both emerged from it unscathed. But you surely have your first match in front of fans, in front of like someone with experience. Sorry, Stacks, he's my mate, but I think would I class Stacks as my mate? I don't. It's one of those when like you have it's like you meet someone through like a mutual friend, and then they sort of join your group or vice versa. The litmus test of what would it look like if me and you just went for a pint, just me and you? How awkward would that get? Yeah, exactly. You don't need the glue in the middle. So would it be awkward? And therefore, if it's that awkward, he's not your real mate. I might get heat with Stacks for this. I'm going to ask him this question, actually. We can bond over it.
Okay.
Next time I see him, I'll ask him.
Sorry, I was just looking at. I'm fascinated now about Obafemi's cage match. His fifth match was again,
Tony D.
No. But he's one of our favourites. It's a guy who had a lot of heart.
Oh God,
he's on an episode of Level Up, so we can go and dig that one out. Von Wagner.
I still genuinely hope he's okay.
I've never wanted to go to an NXT Live more than this one. 20th of January, 2023, in Fort Pierce, Florida, USA. Von Wagner was opposing. It was a tag match. On one side, Von Wagner and Big Body Javi versus Obafemi and fucking Bron Breakker. What does that look like? Jesus.
To reinforce the ring.
What's Big Buddy Abbey looking like after that? You'll be taking the bumps, mate.
Yeah.
I would completely agree. I was going to say Lola Vice for me, and another obvious one, Javon Evans.
Oh, God, Javon Evans.
And I really like Fallon Henley, since she's like, she really stood out in that ladder match.
She's got that, the stuff looks like it would actually hurt a bit. Down. Snug.
Early shouts for the Rumble this year, says Matthew Skeets. Matthew's going for Finn Balor for the men's and Bianca Belair for the women's. Finn goes on to challenge Gunther at WrestleMania for the world title that he wins from Priest at SummerSlam, says Matthew. And Bianca turns heel to win and challenge Bayley.
I'm not trying to be an arsehole, but like Finn Balor versus Gunther happened this week and it was not very good. And I'm not saying they would never do a Raw match on WrestleMania the next year. You don't know who's going to get really over. You just don't, or who's going to really catch fire. And, Finn Balor might start. I think he has to pick and choose how hard he goes in certain matches, because he's been bumping for a long old time, and maybe he's saving that really high intense performance when he has his blow off with Damian Priest, whenever that is, or his.
Someone asked, do you think that needs a title or no? I don't think
it's a grudge program. You don't need the title for that. So who knows? Maybe he's still capable, but not. And this is understandable. Not always willing. But it would seem to me that Finn Balor just is not doing world title matches. He's not winning Rumbles at this phase of his career. You could have a Twilight run, a Renaissance. Many have before. I just can't see it. For the Rumble, right? So it's probably Cody Rock. They basically told you what's happening on the Raw after WrestleMania.
I'm writing my picks down, by the way, and you're going to guess them.
And in fact, there's a storyline reason for it. He's pinned him at WrestleMania 40 Night 1, and it's not as if The Rock needs to or will ever want to just do the Royal Rumble. He doesn't have to. So that would leave a challenger for the World Heavyweight title to win the Rumble. Do they do Punk versus Gunther?
I like that a lot.
Can CM Punk really be a babyface? Can he behave until then? Punk versus Gunther, and then
main event in it. It's a night one main event. If you're doing Rock, Cody night 2,
and then Punk loses it around SummerSlam, and then does something with Cody. Starts the build with the Cody thing. That's how I would do it if it were up to me.
Women's Rumble winner?
Gunther versus Punk. Sorry, before they even write down a word on the script, has that intrigue of, and it's ridiculous, but it's just people's, imaginations. I think Gunther's seriously hurt anyone in his life. He just hits hard in the right places, and he's very, very, very skilled. But because he's so good at the work of making, and he, obviously hurts being in there with Gunther, people would think he's going to injure CM Punk, and the body's too frail to work a Gunther match. So before a word is written down or a word comes out of their mouths, it's already got that unbelievable intrigue surrounding it. Women's, I have no idea. Would Becky Lynch come back at that point?
Ooh, I don't know about her.
Potentially. It's such a weird logjam where there's so many promising, like Raw is all hell, but promising women in NXT. There's loads.
I think Roxanne Perez could.
What are your picks?
Well, I've written them down.
It's time to play the game! Time to play the game! Ha 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 ha!
Did it. Who do you think, I think, should win the 2025 Royal Rumble?
Right, because she's already got the Money in the Bank briefcase, I don't think you're going for Tiffany Stratton.
Your logic's, you're right, yeah.
Maybe. So she cashes in on Nia Jax, who swears her revenge by winning the Royal Rumble.
It's not Nia Jax.
So I've got one more guess, because that's
one more guess, yeah.
Who's he? Natalia.
It's not.
The Rock and Jade Cargill. You think The Rock's working the Rumble?
He's coming out of 30 and binning everyone out. Thank you very much. See you in April, guys.
He's got the storyline. Well, I beat you. What kind of a man would you be, boy, if you ignored that?
That's what he gave him. It was a number 30 Royal Rumble ball.
Not being funny.
That's actually... I've just made that up. And we just stumbled across something here. Let's get a few more questions in. Colin Murtaugh, thank you for your question, Colin. Who's the most underused wrestler in AEW?
Oh, God.
Hang on, I'm just going to put my feet up for this one.
The most underused wrestler in AEW is Konosuke Takeshita. I know he hasn't just stood behind Don Callis this year, and I know he's in the G1 at present, and he had been wrestling a bit more regularly. A guy like that needs to be on at least one TV program every single week. We are talking about a guy who, for me, more so than even Will Ospreay, I prefer Takeshita. You know, it's subjective, I'm allowed. You've got someone who is as close to a freakish athlete all-rounder to Kenny Omega in his prime as anyone I can remember, and he's not on TV every week. At a minimum, you should have Konosuke Takeshita as TNT champion, defending it every week and doing the Gunther IC run, but in WWE, in AEW rather. Like just a guy who is so good, he'll just kick your ass clean every single week.
It is weird coming up to All In, All Out season and thinking, this time last year, this is what he was doing. And now, I know he's, but now.
He's pretty much in the same place.
Yeah.
Those 2 victories over Kenny Omega. What a waste. I think Kenny Omega shouldn't have been doing that. There was no plan. I love Kenny Omega. I don't know if I've ever made that clear. But obviously, Kenny was obviously willing to do that because he rates Takeshita very highly. DDT, shared history, whatever. Not shared, but whatever. Look, it's Konosuke Takeshita, someone that unbelievable at pro wrestling, should be doing it rather a lot.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I was racking my brains for a different answer, and it's like I remember seeing people a while back, and I don't agree with this take, saying they didn't need to sign Okada because Konosuke Takeshita is like the next big Japanese star. I disagree with that.
I disagree with that immensely. It's pretty dodgy.
But I think that he is, going to be or could be a huge Japanese star because of he's unbelievable.
He's a huge star. Full stop. He's so had the best TV match of the year against Derby. To this day, I think it's probably still the best one on TV. A match against Ospreay was just godly. Some of the stuff they did in there was just outrageous. It's Takeshita.
All the Beast Mortars. But now he's probably going to get a title shot. So our answers have changed in the last 24 or so hours. Is there anything else I can think of?
Daniel Garcia?
Feels like he's on the verge, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Of finally being...
When he has those trunks on, he's different.
Different gravy.
He's had a couple of bad nights when he's been in and around this MJF Ospreay. He's had a couple of nights where I'm thinking, do I really see it in you? I want to, because I think he's very, very, very clever. And some of the matches he's had against Bryan Danielson have been absolutely outrageous. But he's had a few nights this year where I think he still just feels a little bit wet round the ears.
Outrunners for me. I genuinely have them on TV every week. I think I'm really like, outside of the obvious, if we could bump into / interview people overall in top of the list.
Yeah.
Just.
It's incredibly entertaining. Put a smile on your face. Like, actual joy is so rare. So it is a rare commodity.
It is, yeah.
When I see the Outrunners, a smile on the face. And for me, that's saying something.
We've asked this question a lot. I feel like we've answered it before, but I'm going to ask it again.
Move on then.
Jamie says, how do you feel if Dynamite went 3 hours?
Oh, no. Hey.
Sorry. Oh, it's more. Dynamite went 3 hours. Rampage was the women's show, and Collision was an AEW Ring of Honor hybrid.
I'm sorry. I hate it. I don't need, at this point, right, I don't need 2 hours of Dynamite.
Yes.
I don't. Maybe I would if Collision didn't exist. I don't need to see it go 3 hours. Ever. And this isn't just because there's a touch of malaise surrounding AEW subjectively, and you can feel it in sort of the arenas, you can see it in the data of the attendances. I wouldn't have wanted 3 hours in February 2020.
No.
I wouldn't want it in the summer of 2021, sorry. And I'm damn sure I don't need to see it now. You know what my ideal
That's not the solution to they're not dwindling anymore, but their rating sort of plateau is not, just do it 3 hours then.
Do you know what my ideal would be? If it was, I would take Rampage, that 2021 where you got like, another bonus, just an hour on a Saturday morning.
It was a little treat, wasn't it? Yeah.
Late 2021 was ideal because couldn't get enough of Dynamite, and he's got a little taste of Rampage, and it worked because something like Pac Andrade got the chance to have a proper match on Rampage, whereas it was then the roster was feeling a little bit crowded, so it just felt like, there's too much stuff for Dynamite now with this roster. Put some of it on Rampage. It was like the perfect solution. Yes. And then, it just... And then it got a bit much. Just in general, right? I wish there were 3 American majors, each having a 1-hour TV show per week.
Good. Fulfill our preview review. Yeah?
Yeah. I just need an hour.
Yeah. Well... I think
it's not happening. It's obviously the complete opposite of the trend of content in every sort of area. We're all Homer Simpson eating donuts in hell.
I feel terrible because the number one Sidgwick mega fan, Matt Rains, has been on. But I've already answered his question because he was asking about what you think happens. Who wins the main event?
You should have vetted the questions, really.
He also says the winner goes on to lose at All Out to the Beast more twice. So,
sorry, say again. What was the question?
He was just asking who wins the main event at All In. But
I think Danielson.
But I'm going to give him a shout out and say, if not the Beast Mortis dethroning the champion, what happens at All Out? We haven't even really thought about it. It's only 2 weeks after All In.
Yeah, and it's wild because they've set up Derby for Grand Slam, which is like it's at September. Yeah. It's my birthday week usually because the first one was the 22nd.
Was the Danielson? Is that
That's my birthday.
Yeah.
So then it's gone to 23rd because it's also Wednesday, so it goes on. So my birthday week or thereabouts. That's well after All Out. So for All Out, thanks for your question, man, and your continued support. Is that when they do Hangman Swerve? Because if Swerve doesn't have the title...
Yeah.
But then that's what Hangman wants from him. But then it is a grudge feud as well. Look, they'll need something. They will need something. The best thing that they've done so far, and I am begging them to just sacrifice, 10,000 buys or whatever. Don't signpost the events of All In to build All Out. It's Wembley. The sold...
You can build it in 2 weeks. It's a real ask, but you can. You can lay the foundations with some other matches of like, well, we're not doing...
They could step up Storm, Mariah May, for example.
Yeah.
They sold 2,500 tickets in a week for All In.
Really?
I don't know if it's because it was payday yesterday or what, or if it's just... the card's firming up and people have thought it's never selling out. I'll just buy my ticket as and when, and it's actually happening. But I think it's up to like 45,000 now. They can get it to 55. It would look really, really respectable.
If you get a ticket for that, you might as well get a ticket to our live show. WhatCulture.com/tickets goes down on the same day as All In, and then head over to Sweet Chin Disco.
12 p.m. start, so you've got more than enough time for it to finish and walk the 2 minutes to Wembley.
Yeah, you're right. It is literally a few minutes walk. There's some other people doing shows in London. They're miles away. Don't waste your money on them. Come to us, WhatCulture.com/tickets, and then Sweet Chin Disco afterwards. Max Caster's going to be there. Prince Nana's going to be there. We're all going to be there. And for some reason, I'm going to be hosting, but it's going to be a load of fun. I can't wait for that day. I'm very selfish here because a friend of mine has...
Is it Adam W?
It's not. It's my... Well, technically, he started off as a friend of a friend, but now I'd like to class him as a good friend. He lives over in Canada. He's a doctor. He's genuinely called Dr. Heaven.
All right.
Dr. Seb Heaven simply says, "Do you believe?" and shares a gif of Joe Hendry. Do you believe they can keep this going in NXT? Or what's the... Because he's training at the Performance Center full time now.
Yeah, I believe. I've believed for a long time. He just, as I've said a million times, I'm sorry, on these podcasts for long, regular listeners, like, he has emerged however many years ago as a character-based, throwback almost wrestler, gimmick, entrance, showbiz, when what became the prevailing trend was Carter Omega, kick pads, long, super intricate, athletic, epic matches, asterisks is thrown all over the place. Now, that has reached a stage of fatigue, just like everything else does. Like, people forget, Ruthless Aggression was basically the Attitude Era. The tone, format of the shows did not change. If anything, it got even more grubby and tawdry and crap because they just kept chasing that dragon, but people were done with it.
Yeah.
And people, it's wild for wrestling to be like done with great matches because otherwise, what's the point? And it's a bit weird where we are.
But you hit the nail on the head a while back when you used the analogy of the MCU. Of like, for a while, it was like, oh my God, the next Avengers film's coming out. Oh my God, we got to watch the next,
Is this me?
Guardians of the Galaxy. You and I were talking about this, yeah. And we sort of, you nailed it because I was like, oh, now I just go, I can't be bothered. I can't keep up with all this.
Yeah, there was. I think one of the examples I used as well is like, there is Star Wars.
That was how we got there,
yeah. There is a Star Wars series in the extended universe or whatever. It's not really my thing. On Disney Plus that I've never heard of. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Like, I remember the hype around Phantom Menace. I know the biggest thing in the world is it's coming back. It was like absolutely everywhere. These things just trend in and out of fashion, and now people want a bit of showbiz. They've seen it all, or they feel like they have, and it'll all just get subverted again. The time is right for Joe Hendry. He's incredibly creative, incredibly talented. I believe for a long time, very telegenic, very handsome, very creative, knows how to get over, he stands out, has something that nobody else does in wrestling right now. It's his time.
Final few questions. The brilliant Steve Fasso sent another question in. Thank you, Steve, as always. He says, hello, me again, with another what-if question. I've wondered this for a while. What if the pandemic never happened? Would AEW's hot streak have lasted longer? And would Stadium Stampede / Anarchy in the arena even exist?
Well, that's a very interesting question. AEW was... This is a Cody Rhodes quote, but I'm paraphrasing it. But he says we're heading to the moon.
Yeah.
And he also said around that time... I think it was around that time. I'm speaking off the top of my head. Don't take this as gospel, but I think he said we're making some pretty serious moves. I think that they might have already had conversations. I think they already did have conversations with Punk. And then, the pandemic happened, and there's no way he's going to, debut in Daly's place. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think, there were... The thing is, right, it's almost scary to think about with AEW. They did so well to preserve their audience. And I know it was a smaller audience, but they did it in a way that WWE didn't until they went to the Thunderdome. The momentum was with AEW in 2020. That run up to Revolution 2020 was absolute. I don't just say it. Felt like it was the best version of itself.
People scoff when you talk about Dynamite being Monday Night Raw. I know they did briefly.
For 2 weeks.
I could have seen that becoming a regular thing.
Just maybe, because
maybe not still now, but definitely.
Here's the thing as well, right? You could argue now that Tony Khan has done all of his ideas and he's kind of regurgitating them, and this happens with every booker. Mm-hmm. If you look at the creativity and the level of detail in 2020, like the Jericho Mox program, right? That feud was my third favorite thing behind MJF and Cody and The Elite. And still, if you look at the detail of how they plotted all that out of, he's got his eye stabbed.
Yeah.
He's going on a cruise next week and he's going to be a pirate. And then the Santana stuff where they sort of made it way more emotional and like, it's a bit of a knockabout action movie fun, but then there's like a really sobering element. And then the idea that, all right, well, Santana's dad did suffer from blindness, and that's why it's not a bit of a joke to him. The amount of detail there was extravagant. It was ridiculous. And if you look at what they managed in 2020 with Stadium Stampede, with all the little intricate details of Hangman Page's arc and what they did with MJF and Jericho and how much thought went into that, creatively, the amount of ideas that were flowing throughout that organization in the pandemic years and dailies was outrageous. It's ridiculous, the amount of detail. You even got like the Abaddon Anna Jay thing then.
Yeah.
Like, it was just idea after idea after idea after idea. Imagine that in front of fans. Imagine Tony Khan that dialed in. You know, I don't want to be depressing, guys, but you'll never get that again. Like, you'll never get a wrestling booker like with that much material and imagination, like 1 or 2 years in when it's 5 or 6. It just doesn't happen. It really doesn't happen. I
always think of that when I see
Anarchy in the Arena probably wouldn't exist because the idea was, sorry, I know I've just stepped on your dick, because it will leave my head, I'm rubbish with things like this. Anarchy in the Arena, I'm fairly certain came about because it's that stupid calendar first thing where it's like, oh, we should do another Stadium Stampede or whatever because it's double or nothing, and we've done it the previous 2 years, and it's just a staple. And I think it was John Moxley who went, well, we've got fans back. Why the hell would we do that? And then what if we just do it in an entire arena, but with fans in there? That's how it came about.
That blood and guts that we could have gotten as well.
Probably would have been flawed, but good in patches, because that's what blood and guts is.
But
yeah, I'm being a dick.
Dream.
No. You're forgetting. Nicholas Jackson had to go on paternity leave and was replaced by Matt Hardy. That's what people forget, because people see that original match graphic because it was announced like quite well before it was going to happen. But no, Nick Jackson wasn't going to be in it.
I always think of Pando stuff when imagine if you're a footballer and you scored the best goal of your career, and all you've got is, still great, obviously, but like all you've effectively got is the bench going, yay.
No.
And it goes off your arse in it's like, final couple of questions. I'll save one about Kenny Omega for you for last.
No.
But it might be tinged with a little bit of sadness.
Great.
The arse formerly known as Jimmy Blade. Good question, this.
Good name as well. It always pops me.
Are you ever worried that a wrestler will see what you say and be legitimately aggrieved?
That is an excellent question.
Good,
okay?
isn't it?
It's a good question. And I've got a general philosophy about this. Sometimes I think, right, my general philosophy towards, like, it's so pretentious to say this, but comedy. We aim for laughs sometimes on this podcast. Yes. Like, I'm not Brandon Thurston. I try and do it with a mixture of
Guts to this one.
Insight, analysis, and like a bit of patter, a bit of banter. I mean, look at that.
Which one? Which one at me or him?
It's the same picture.
Yeah, it's the.
I like to punch up. Matt Hardy. Part of me thinks he's a bit of a carny who tries to interject himself in storylines, and he has a completely overinflated opinion of himself, not warranted by his recent output. Maybe he deserves a bit of a kicking, like a verbal kicking. Yeah. Like, come on, you can take the piss. You can take the piss. I mean, who do you think you are? You're not what you were 20 years ago. Yes. You know what I mean? Maybe you're a bit of a sad act for trying to hold on to your spot. Paul Levesque, arsehole. A complete arsehole of a bloke deserves a bit of a kicking online, right? Bit of banter at his expense. You can make jokes. There are times when I'm like, that wrestler, not a fan of theirs. Maybe I went a little bit too. I try, and you don't know who these people are, but if I'm going to be particularly venomous, I'll try and reserve it for people who I think are dicks.
Yeah.
Or have shown behaviour.
You never go two-footed on like someone on NXT. As well, I know, some bits.
I often like when it's NXT. I often like try and caveat everything with it saying, I feel harsh. They've worked 30 matches.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even think it's a reviewable show personally. And I think that's half the reason why this ridiculous extended universe that we've created comes around. I love this question. It's very good. So that's my general approach. Here's something. Critique exists everywhere, and evidently I am one. I strongly support it. It's what I've always wanted to do since I've picked up a magazine. And John Menzies, right? Remember that if there's people of a certain age. Do you even remember John Menzies? I'm older than you. I've always approached it with a critical eye from my teenage years. So I think critics are important. I think that I've had a lot of my fandom of various things shaped by critics. I have never, nor will I ever in my life, at people.
No.
At people on social media. Ever. Right? Ever. If you're a vanity searcher, right, you're an idiot. You are an absolute moron who's trying to make your day worse, right? If you've got any kind of name, and I've got what? I mean, other than the number one podcast in the UK, and the freaking Undertaker.
One of the only professional wrestling podcasts that's actually worth a
I've got what? 11.8k followers on Twitter. That's enough to get a lot of responses.
Yeah.
Positive and negative. I'll never vanity search. I know what's out there. I've seen it when they're atting me, let alone what they think they can get, like say when I'm not there. I just don't want to do it. It's like I don't want to know everyone's opinion of me because it's never ever going to be completely universal. So I blame you. Kenny Omega promo just lives. I blame you for vanity search, and don't vanity search. I did an inadvertent vanity search, right? Because for whatever reason, I wanted to go through my old articles, and there's an author page that's just whatculture.com/Michael Sidgwick, and it stopped popping up. It stopped popping up in my, you know, when you go to your history and you type in MI, and it would either my Twitter or whatever, and it would just come up. Started to go, right, Michael Sidgwick, What Culture. Then it would come up with my Twitter, and then the author page, and then the thing I saw below that a couple of weeks ago when I last did it was a Reddit squared circle of
it's always
Michael Sidgwick needs help. Does anyone else think that he needs help? It's like, because I don't like WWE, I need to see a psychiatrist. There must be something wrong with me because I think Triple H is a dork and WWE's boring or something. Like, I know. That's see the irony in that. Anyway. So that's my general philosophy of it's going to be out there no matter how relatively insignificant you are. If you've got a vague name in a sub-circle of a content, of a thing of entertainment, you will get talked about. Just don't look for it. Do not look for it, and I will never at you. And if it's, I try and punch up.
I think it is also, you know, we go to certain things each year where wrestlers will be in attendance, and I never feel...
I don't know who I am. I've been around.
Yeah.
I know some wrestlers know who I am.
Yeah.
I don't think the vast majority of them do.
But I also think you can... we've never sat here and said you should hate this... Like, without you say... Aside from the obvious ones, which I think is kind of universally agreed on, you should hate this person. You should hate this thing. You just say... You can say, I hate this thing. I hate this match or whatever. And at the end of the day, they come up, why did you say that? Because that's how I felt.
Yeah.
That's what Jake Hurwitz from Jake and Amir always calls it the pure heart rule. I was saying how I felt. I'm not a fan of that. Sorry. It's nothing against you even necessarily personally. It's about, I just didn't like that certain thing. As Adam Nicholas will attest to, the most nervous I've ever been surrounded by wrestlers would be Wale Mania from this year. When I don't know why I was, because you
see him
every week, close personal friend. But Nicholas, you remember when because I'd bumped into Tony D about 2 minutes before, because I'd come to see you, hadn't I? And I said to Nicholas, I was like, I just bumped into Julius Creed. I think I'd gone to the loo or something. I've just bumped into Julius Creed and Tony D. And I have to say something. And I literally just went up and I just said, just want to say we're huge fans that you were here from the UK. We're huge fans of both of yours. And then before literally I can say anything else, they ran away from me. No, they were called onto the stage, I think it was, or at least that's what they told me. And then I came back and I was like, I was proper good, wasn't I? Because I was like, that's it. There's the chance. If I ever wanted a photo with Tony D, it was there, but it was gone in a second.
You legitimately love Tony D.
I genuinely do. Like, I really like him. I'd like to be able to chat to him more about it and be like, how's that work there? A mafia gimmick, and you go, I'll make it work. And he's in a title match that weekend, of course, and all that. And I'm gutted. And then I go, I think on the way walking back, I'd walked past I'd seen the Riz in a different area or something like that. Luca was there, and I'm like, I mean, you've got 3/4, and say his name and he appears. Basically, he walks in the room, and I'm like, Nicholas Stacks over there.
He said he smelled incredible.
He did. And we were like, I was like, do we go and get a photo? And he's like, you kind of have to. Like, what do we do if he knows? But he does know, obviously.
Yeah.
But what if he decides because he's in front of
it's one of those when he doesn't want to admit.
Yeah. Well,
he's trying to show off in front of his friends,
Yeah, he was.
We've all been there. We've all been there.
He's nothing but nice, and then
I don't like wrestling. That's crap.
I think maybe someone clued him in the immediate aftermath because of that tweet, but. Yeah, I think. Right, final question. Kenny Omega-based question. Thank you to Ashley for this. When Kenny Omega returns, hang on, just preemptive Michael Sidgwick's head.
Oh my God.
Do you think he will come back as a special attraction performer, wrestling once or twice a year, or will he pick up where he left off?
I think he's a deranged workhorse.
Yeah.
If it has to come down to that, on doctor's advice or whatever, or he feels, because he's a perfectionist as well. Mm-hmm. He's so tough. He says he isn't tough. He's look at the injuries he had. Look at what he looked like in 2021 compared to what he looked like when he had the Ospreay match in January 2023.
You're thrashed, you always say, don't you?
It's like, Jesus Christ, he must have been in agony and just fought through it. So he's a tough bastard.
Laundry list of stuff that he was going through.
Oh, God,
vertigo he had?
Vertigo he
had a boo-boo on his elbow,
You had a boo-boo on your elbow.
We've got all the records.
Yeah. That's well. You were careless, John. Check. I want to go to Japan now. Check. Can I do some indies? Check.
Oh, check.
Can I do a hardcore match? Check. You were reckless. Oh, God, I love it. Anyway, I want to see that. I want to see a part-time attraction, Kenny. I want to see... You were careless. I want to see that version of Kenny Omega who knows how goddamn good he is. What's interesting, right, is, can you remember a couple of months ago, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 months ago, he was, so when he was streaming, and now he's not because he's undergone the surgery and hopefully he's trying to come back as best he can. And he said the streams are gone for a while. I don't have time. He just basically went off on Dave Meltzer and said that I broke his brain.
Yes.
I've changed what he thinks a good match is, but now he doesn't get it anymore because it's not the same when it's not me, or at least that's what he sort of implied. And he was also saying, I'm just sick of the same old. Like, when he wants to come back, he feels like he might want to do something completely different. He's just sick of the same old. Now, this is brought to the attention of Dave Meltzer. And he said, I was just building a match with Ospreay for down the line. It's a long-term thing between them. I'm not so sure, if I'm being honest. He's already had that match premised on that meta thing with Ospreay.
Doesn't need any more spice, does it?
Doesn't need more spice.
AEW doing that, yeah.
He also said on TV that Ospreay-Danielson was legitimately one of the best matches he'd ever seen. And he was his hand was shaking because he was getting withdrawals. And he's usually very clever. He was crossing streams there, saying one thing on a podcast and then not another. Look, I think Kenny Omega he's had that length. He missed most of 2022, and then he's missed a lot of 2024. And then in 2023, he was a bit bitty. He was part of that very long cast. You had that programmer, Don Callis, that if you ever thought they were going to split up as an act, it would mean a hell of a lot more than it did. I get the feeling, truly, that he's had so many warnings from his body that he has to, at this point, be that babyface. He has to come back because he's going to be so enormously over as a babyface in AEW.
Yeah.
He surely has to realize at this point, I know the setup stuff with the Young Bucks again, just maybe get away from that. Maybe be a different but same Kenny Omega.
Yeah.
Put yourself at the absolute top of that pile and go and prove it and be the champion. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it's his last chance to be Kenny Omega, that big match wrestling superstar champion, babyface, because God damn it, he's had enough warnings from his body telling him he doesn't have that long left. I just want him to be that guy in that promo, and I'm not taking the piss, because when I know we quote it all the time and we genuinely love it so much.
Yeah.
He comes across in that promo as if he controls the fate of pro wrestling fans' hearts, because that's how much they are relying on him to be Kenny Omega. Be the guy in that promo.
Would you take a Kenny Omega who, I mean, not to say he's going to cut that sort of promo every single week on Dynamite, but never wrestled on Dynamite or Collision or Rampage, but worked every pay-per-view?
If he wants to be the best, he has to do it all. He says this.
Can't wait till he comes back.
I want to see him on Dynamite. I want to see him wrestling on Dynamite. I want to see him wrestling on pay-per-views. I want to see him wrestling on Dynamite and having an incredible match on Dynamite built with an incredible promo. You were reckless. On Dynamite, and then I want to see him better it on the pay-per-view. I want him to be, as best as he can possibly be, the Kenny Omega for 2 or 3 years, I think is realistic. Mm-hmm. I think he's only 40. Look at this. Yeah, AJ's having it 47 or whatever. Danielson's he's 4 years older, I think. 3 or 4 years older than Kenny. I want to see Kenny Omega be Kenny Omega for 3 years.
Well, let us know your thoughts on everything we've discussed in the comment section or on X at WhatCulture WWE. Thank you to everyone who sent us the Twitter questions. Sorry if we didn't get around to them, but we'll try and do these more and more regularly, because I love doing these and we get some fantastic
There's
questions.
only one match. We should mention this is in place of Collision, because at time of recording, there was only one match announced.
Yeah.
What can you do with that?
And it's got the Beast Mortos in. You're never going to bet against him.
No, so it's going to be at least 4 stars.
Yeah.
Apart from Dynamite.
Continue the conversation with us on X, though, at WhatCulture WWE. Well, actually, they can follow both of us. You can follow Michael Sidgwick at
M. Sidgwick.
Follow me at Adam Wilbourn. Follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. Follow our brilliant producer at It's Adam Nicholas. And make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily wrestling podcasts. Thank you once again to Michael Sidgwick. Thank you once again to everyone for sending our questions. This has been your questions answered. We'll see you soon.